Welcome everybody to the next edition. This edition of our class, and I mean the title says it all. Why would somebody want to be a flower, especially a lotus flower? I was reading a few things about this particular flower, and it goes back to ancient Egypt. And in many of the drawings of Egypt and the hieroglyphics, they were always referring to a scent of a flower that the emperors and the empresses had. They always were talking about the people in the high ranks were always smelling like flower. And they were making reference to this particular flower, the lotus flower at the time. And so it became a symbol. And so what is the big deal about a lotus flower? What does it do? Well, first of all, it's a very special flower to the respect that it survives where no plant survives. No matter what plant you would have in your house, whether it's a very hardy sunflower or whatever plant that you would end up putting in this environment where the lotus feeds on, it would end up dying. It would be actually gone in a week. And what makes it that? Because it's normally growing in swampy areas where it's the muddiest, stinkiest, the water is stagnant, so it's full of bacteria, it's full of parasites, it's full of bugs that would eat everything. In fact, the parasites are so bad that some people in some stagnant water, if they go swimming and some of it gets in the ear, it's been known to cause some level of brain damage because it eats away through the brain. It's that kind, and the lotus flower thrives in this environment. And why would this particular flower, with this kind of beauty, be able to live in such an environment? Well, first of all, it has a special coating over the roots, over the petals, and it makes anything that touches it, it doesn't like. The bugs think it's bitter, and so it stays away. And every other plant it just eats away at it, caterpillars and everything else, but it stays away from the lotus flower. And if you look at some of the environment that this plant actually thrives in, there's so much lily pads, there's so much vegetation on the surface that there's no sunlight underneath. So anything that would take root would die because there's no sunlight. But somehow the lotus flower has found a way to survive in this environment. And really, it goes even further that if it wasn't for the lotus flower, the swamp would be able to be victorious, to say basically that they have conquered nature in this way, that beauty does not exist. But because of the lotus flower, they can't. That victory is not there. And so what does that really mean? The lotus flower, and even when we look at how the Buddhist monks refer to lotus flowers, because if you've ever been to any crystal shop, you'd notice that a lot of the deities and some of the drawings that you'll see have the lotus flower etched in them. And it's everywhere. It's on flutes, it's on crystals, it's on many things to give it that quality that you can survive anywhere. That the intention is that you are like a lotus flower, that nothing can penetrate you because you have a very special coating around you, and it never leaves you. And even in the chant, and I'm sure you've heard it, the Om Mani Padme Hum, it's a chant that Buddhists have. Well, basically the translation means the jewel is in the lotus. That's what it basically means, or praise to the jewel within the lotus. And they're referring to the lotus flower. The jewel is actually you. And when we look at the various symbols, everything goes to what is the harshest environment that the plant world would be able to go into, because it's nature. When you go for a walk, when you do all these things in nature, we always look for some kind of metaphors that of why some things survive in the harshest environment. I saw a movie a while ago on mountain goats. And I don't know if you've ever seen mountain goats running up almost a vertical cliff, and if they're being chased by a bobcat or a lion, they will seriously run up almost a vertical line because they just know how to do that. And it's the harshest environment. There's no vegetation, and somehow they found a way over millions of years to survive. Lotus flower is the same. Any other plant would die within a week, but the lotus flower somehow has that resilience that it goes. So that's why it's compared to our lives. When we come in as humans, we have a special coating around us. And what some people say is over time, it starts to dwindle or it gets weaker because then we feel more of the things around us that we are always fussing and worrying about. But that's not true. It goes down in stealth mode or it is turned off, but it never dwindles. It feels like it dwindles, but it all is based on your thoughts. It all based on what you think of yourself. The lotus flower doesn't know it's beautiful. It just is beautiful. Nobody sees it in the swamp, and it doesn't care. It's not there for your enjoyment. It's there because that's how it blossoms. But as humans, sometimes we'll say, oh, look at me. How come they're not looking at me? How come I can't find somebody? No one's, and there's that energy that maybe somebody left me, or I'm being abandoned, or I don't have the love. And that's how that coating starts to seem like it's getting weaker, because that self-love that is ingrained in you, you're not agreeing with it. And so it comes down based on the belief levels that you have. And as soon as you start reactivating this at any age, whether it's in your teenage years or in your 20s or sometimes 50s, 60s, and 70s, people start becoming more spiritually minded and they start looking at things differently and they start looking at their energy differently. And all of a sudden, that coding comes back up. And they start realizing I am more resilient and they can start doing more as soon as they believe they can. When we are detached from this world, in other words, when we are on this world and mentally we detach in some way where we're not here, I'm not sure if you remember the example that we gave a few weeks ago where I had you visualize you were on the moon. Okay, you were on the moon and you could see yourself on Earth. And right away, our energies started to get more calm. When you detach from this world, we always flourish. When we are attached to this world, we start to diminish. Now, of course, the question comes up, well, we have to be attached to this world. We're on it. We're in physical form. And that is true. Like when you're working, when you're doing your thing with the kids, setting up, make sure that they're safe. Yes, you are fully attached, and that's okay. But all Spirit is saying is not to be so attached that it becomes detrimental, because then you only become earthbound, and then there's no rest. There's no detachment. Now, there are natural detachments, like sleep. Okay, you fall asleep, you have no idea where you're going. And where your dreams are taking you, that is a form of detachment. So thank the God we do go to sleep. And as we start noticing, if we get less and less sleep, we become more irritable. And of course, the scientists and doctors, well, they say that's because we're not getting our rest and it's an overload in our system. And they have sort of human definitions of what happens. But energetically, what's really happening is you are attached too long. The sleep was your haven. If you're sleeping for 6 to 7 hours, you're maybe detached for about 5 of those hours, because the first hour you're still thinking about, oh, what am I going to do tomorrow when I go to work? Okay. Oh yeah, I got to make sure the kids take their lunch because they forgot them yesterday. You know, there's some human stuff going on, but as soon as you drift off into that sleep, you go from this alpha wave and then back into a theta, which is a deeper sleep. Then we become detached, and from there you could go anywhere. And our bodies, and energetic bodies, actually come out of our bodies and go underneath our bed, actually. This is why we always say in feng shui, make sure the under part of your bed is all clear, because you sleep under your bed every night. And if you've got old taxes that you haven't done for a long time, if you've got your thigh buster under your bed, or if you've got other things, you're still working. So you're not essentially detached yet, because it's those tools that are making sure that you're not disconnecting. All right. But anyway, but it's all about attaching and detaching. So what is detaching? What are some examples? Of course, I already gave the example of sleep. The other is playing with your kids, having fun, laughter, spending time with your family, being enthusiastic about a project. Oh, I just got this a fantastic project. You could be on the beach and saying, okay, to your kids, let's build a sandcastle. All that is detachment, because it's not figuring out the worries and all the guilt and everything else that the world is providing you. You become that lotus flower. That's that coating really strong, because you're focused on joy. You're focused on your kids, all right? Imagination is another one. If you're in imagination, this is what happens when we watch a movie and it takes us to a beautiful place and you're in this zone. So if it's a good movie and positive, that is a form of detachment. Spirit are not too crazy about the horror movies, because that reattaches you to the earth and it makes you fearful and questionable. And would that ever happen to me? Kind of thing. So the celebration is another one. If you're celebrating a birthday, if you're celebrating that you just achieved something, any kind of celebration for your kids. Hey, this was your first A that you've ever got. That's great. We're gonna have a part, some kind of celebration. That's also a form of detachment. Now, how do we get attached? Okay, it's first of all the overuse of social media. Now, again, Spirit understands that you do want to keep current on what's going on in your world. Of course, there are some things that you just need to know. One of the things is that if you spend a lot of time on the news, on Twitter, looking at what the latest thing is, and right now there's a whole host of things going on in the earth. If it's not the financial market, then it's the woke movement. If it's not that, it's something medical with the vaccines. If it's not that, it's something with gender. And like right now, there's a lot. I have been around quite a few decades. I've never seen so many dynamics as there is right now. It's been like that and orchestrated like that for a reason. But essentially, when you're looking at it, one can be very overwhelmed. And so you might want to look at that to a point, and then when it becomes uncomfortable, then you don't have to look at it for hours and hours, because that, again, is a form of attachment, and that brings your energy down. What happens is when we start to get into sadness and we stay there, or we get into this energy of hopelessness, that everything is, oh, I don't have a job, I don't have the right education, I'm too old for this job, I should upgrade my skills, but I don't know how, and you put 5 or 6 things together that maybe isn't quite right, and you determine in your mind that it's no use. There's no sense even trying. However, when you start separating those and start addressing them one by one, you can shoot them down very quickly. Regarding, for instance, let's say the example that I haven't gone to school, I don't have a college degree or a university degree. But there are many examples of high school dropouts that are millionaires right now. So it's not just education. Of course, it helps. Please don't misunderstand. However, it's not the only reason. You can't just make a determination of one thing and that's it. And you just sort of blanket it right across. Make it so that you separate them and look at them one at a time. Then it becomes more palatable. Then you could say, well, it's still possible at an age to be successful. You could be in your 40s or your 60s, whatever. It's still possible. I mean, Colonel Sanders started his chicken business just when he hit 80. So he was very successful. So it can't just be age, and it can't just be education, and it can't just, you see what I mean? There's other things. So when we put it all together in a clump, yeah, it looks very overwhelming, and it's hard to decipher it. But when you start separating, when you start detaching from this world, you thrive. What a lot of humans do Spirit is saying is that when people start to segregate or start to separate the world, like they're not detaching, they're in the world and they're separating the things in the world. They're separating things that perhaps a different skin color. They're separating medical choices. They're separating gender. They're separating cultures. They're separating that you were born on the wrong side of the river or something. And there's always that separation. And now we're even seeing gender being separated between the genders. Now there's other things. So the more that we separate that way, our energy starts to go down because we're all one. I'll give you a fantastic example. I got one this morning from Spirit. He says, if you were to look into your living room and then wherever your kitchen is, you would say, okay, that's it. I am going to separate the kitchen air from the living room air. I'm just going to put up a gate and set it up, and that's it. And then you could say, now the air in the kitchen is different than the air in the living room. You could have that belief. And then if that belief is strong enough, then you'll say, well, the north side of the living room and the south side of the living room also has different air. So we got to put another gate in between there. And what we end up doing is start segregating and our mobility, our freedom, and we think that we're being ganged up on, like the whole world is against us in that our part. And the more that we start segregating people and countries and everything else, we become in this heavier energy. So to get out of that, everything is one. The blood on every person, including animals, are the same. The DNA is a little different, but it's only the last 3% of the DNA that changes. It's the same. If you look at the way we look at trauma, the way we cry, the way we feel emotion is all the same. Like we still feel something if we lose a loved one. We're all the same in that way. But somehow forces want us to keep separating because they know it will start to create discord. So when you look at it that way, just keep everything open, including your energy, and saying, I want to just detach from this world. That's the healthiest way. All right. Also, when it comes down to health, scientists have seen that when we are in this form of guilt or fear or anger, our bodies actually perform and they create proteins in our body that match whatever that we do. For instance, if you feel fantastic, let's say you just got a raise, you got a promotion, and you're being, let's say, transferred to Hawaii for your job. So you're elated. Hey, guys, we're going to Hawaii, and they're paying the trip. They're doing everything. And so there's this celebration, there's this happy feeling. So scientists say when we feel happy, our highest point, our bodies create happy proteins. And it goes throughout the whole body and it makes all organs light up and just blossom. That's what they do. That's what your body does. You don't have to manage your body. It has a management of its own just by the feeling and the emotion that you produce. Consequently, if you go and you're fearful of something, you're always fearing that, let's say, the furnace might blow up, or you're always fearing that you take your kids to school and it might not be safe for them, or if you're always fearing something, then your body also creates fear proteins. And fear proteins, as we know, it connects to the kidneys. When the fear proteins are more collected around the kidneys, we'll have more bladder infections, we'll have more kidney problems, we'll have more issues with kidneys, all right? When you are in a state of anger, that more the body will create anger proteins is what they're seeing. And that collects mostly in the liver. And if you're feeling guilt all the time, like if you're feeling guilt over a short time, like let's say you put the wrong answer in on an exam. It says, oh, I should have been A and I chose B. Like that's a short-term guilt. It says, yeah, I knew it was like that, but it's gone. So it doesn't affect your body so much. But let's say you did something years ago and you had a lot of chance to correct it and you decided not to. Like something happened either with a family member or something happened that somebody said something and you could have corrected them, but you never did. And let's say they left and you never had the chance to say you were sorry. So now you have guilt, but that guilt was now you could hold on to that for 50 years. That kind of guilt is much deeper, and that goes right into your heart, that kind of guilt. So your body produces those proteins as we do. So your emotion is your health. As soon as you start feeling good in any way, whether your surroundings dictate the same or not, it's how you look at things and what you see. But when we talk about detachment, what some people think is that I have to detach so that I don't own anything. Like there's that perception. So Spirit wants to be very clear here that when you detach, it has nothing to do with ownership. It has more to do with those things don't own you. Okay? In other words, whatever you have around the house that you feel strongly about, I really like my car, I really like my house, but you know that that's not you. And Spirit does not want those things to own you. And we see that a lot when, let's say, there's a car accident. What is the first thing that you say? Like, here's a brand new car, you just bought it, it's a week old, and then somebody takes it for a ride and they total it. What is your first question? Is the car okay? No. Is everybody okay? In other words, are your kids fine? Is your husband okay? If the dog was in the car, is Fifi or whoever is fine? And if they're fine, that's okay. We could get another car. It's all right. But I can't get another child, all right? If they get hurt, sort of thing. So there's something always more important than the things around us. And so that's what Spirit's saying. When you detach that way, know that you don't want the things to own you. The other thing that we are sometimes thinking about detachment is that, let's say you want to detach, or that's what they're thinking is, detach from negative people. Like you go to a party and you know they're talking about all kinds of silly things. It could be the news. Most time it's the news or politics or whatever. And you kind of stay away. I don't want to go with those negative people because whenever I leave, I just feel like I'm really down. And I don't want to feel down, so I'll stay my distance. I'll go around them. That's not detachment. That's avoidance. All right? And I do that too. It's like you don't have to always go through things. Sometimes I can just say, oh yeah, I don't want to deal with that person. If I ask them how they are, I'll be there for half an hour. It's like an organ recital, I says, no, I don't want to do that. So I'll avoid them. What detachment is, true detachment, is going in the middle of negative people and not being affected. You are that lotus flower where you have this coating, and no matter what they say, it won't bother me. Even if they say something I feel really strongly about, and it could be about anything, and sometimes they'll actually bring up topics that they know will push your buttons. Now, whether it's the vaccine or whether it's abortion or whatever the hot topic is, they'll bring it up on purpose, knowing they might get a rise out of you. Don't fall for it, because that is not a debate. They're just calling you out, but you don't have to. They don't know what they're talking about, and you're unaffected. That's the best. The other thing I heard from this one person is, I used to be really, and this was his words, I used to be really, I gave this person a really rough time whenever they would text me. And this person would say, how you doing? And I wouldn't even respond for hours. I knew they texted and I didn't care. But then I went to other people and addressed them and left this person. And I would treat this person very poorly. They would say, how am I doing? And I'd said, oh, well, I'm okay. I'll talk to you next week, sort of thing. Very rough sort of thing. And it never affected them. And it was one day I realized that all my so-called friends were gone. And it was still this person saying, how you doing? Are you doing okay? Could I bring over something? And then I realized I've been treating the only person that really sort of understood me and was nice to me, and they're still nice. And so we connected, and I said, like, Why? He says, well, because I'm not affected by what other people do. If you have the time, it's always a joy to talk to you. If not, that's okay. And he says, that's the type of friend you never want to let go, because they're there through your best and your worst time in your life. And you will have both. And you might need somebody that when you're really down, that nobody else will have the time for you, but this person will be busy and make time for you. You know, grandfathers are like that. You know, sometimes parents are like that, or brothers, or people that just know or get you. Best friends are like that. You never want to let those go. Sometimes we go through a period that, you know, we're too big for them, or they're not worth our time, and until we reevaluate. And so those are the kind of things that you need to do. But when you're talking about detachment of going, let's say, in the middle of these negative people, look at it this way. If you're trying to prove that a fireproof suit works, it's not a good test to be really far away from the fire, is it? The whole idea is you want to see if this suit works in the fire. And that's what detachment is, so that it doesn't affect you even when you're surrounded by it. And people will go far just to get away from it, but it's not about avoidance. And speaking of the different things about avoidance and how things work, is that years ago I read a book called A Man's Search for Meaning. It was by Viktor Frankl, very famous book. It was a gentleman that was in the concentration camps in World War II. He was in actually 2 of them. And everything was stripped from this gentleman. They took his clothes, his possessions. They killed his entire family in front of him. They took everything, and he had no freedom. And he basically got to the point where the Nazis just wanted to control him. Many people, he said, in his camp, they just committed suicide because they couldn't take it any longer. And he realized that the only freedom that we have left ever is one, is our ability to be able to choose how to respond to something. Our ability to choose how to respond. We could respond in anger, we could respond in sadness, or we could just respond saying whatever it is. But it's something that is uplifting, and that's a choice. And he said the Nazis could never take that, because that was up to me. That is my mindset. And that's how he survived, because he said, when I get out of this, I can't wait to tell the stories to my grandchildren. I can't wait to tell this story, and I will write a book. And he had this in his head, and that's what got him through it. So the very fact that he wanted to share this story afterwards got him through those very difficult times. So we need to find a way of how to overcome hurt. Now, we've said this in other episodes and other classes, that when we look at the traumas and all the things we go through, the bullying that we might have gone through in school, and all the things that hurt us in some way, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever it is, there was a hurt there. How do we deal with it? It is very interesting that that is not taught in school to children, how to take care of their emotion. And they're basic. We don't have 400 emotions. We'll have 8. Anger, how do you respond to anger? How do you respond to sadness? How do you respond to fear? I'll give you a great example. A number of weeks ago, my grandson said he had a dream about a monster when he was dreaming, and it was chasing him, and it was really scary. And he was about to jump him, and he woke up. I says, okay. And I just sort of kept that in my mind. So like, how am I going to address this? So it was just last week, we had an opportunity that I had a flashlight in my pocket, a little flashlight that I got from somebody. And I gave it to him, and he turned it on. I says, I have an idea. I says, let's go in the pantry. And in the pantry, when you open the door and you close it, it's pitch dark, right? So we went in there, and he says, I don't want to go in the dark. He says, okay, we're going to have fun. So we went into the pantry. I says, okay, turn on the light. So he twisted it, the light came on. And he says, okay, we'll make a figure 8 in the ceiling and and so have fun with this light. And once he got comfortable in that environment, I says, okay, now I'm going to pretend I'm a monster. And you shine the light to my eyes because I don't like light. And I went, grrr. And he shined the light. And I thought, oh, no, don't. And he started laughing. And inside it says, this is how that we bring education to kids. Because any psychologist or kindergarten teacher will tell you that the way kids learn is by play. You play with them, they will never forget that. What we did in that pantry in the 5 minutes, he will remember for the rest of his life because it was introduced in play. So now, when he goes into this altered state, when he's dreaming, he will remember it because it was in play. And I know that it's burned in there because now he's going to pull out dad's or granddad's flashlight and shine it. And the monster won't be there. And so, but who tells him that? I mean, it was very fortunate that it was my grandson, and I knew what this will do. But many parents don't know how to address those kinds of things because they're working on their own stuff. They don't know how to deal with their own sadness or their own fears or their own anger. They're still working through it. So they're hoping, well, kids, better luck to you, sort of thing. And they start working it up, but they don't know what to do with the emotion. All these emotions are energy. And so what do we do with energy? We know we can't kill it. It's impossible to kill energy. But we can deflect energy. We can alter energy. We can relabel energy. We can detach from that energy. There are many different techniques we could use, but kids aren't told how to do that. And so when they get into this area, they don't know what to do with it. One example I read was about this toxic relationship that a man had, and he had it for several years, and eventually he just couldn't take it anymore. There was so much verbal abuse, there was so much, and nobody would believe him because he's quite a large man, he said. And this person was, because he wouldn't harm a fly. And that's the thing, because it's just like a puppy when you're dealing with it. We talked about, a man having a cub inside of him, and this cub was really hurt. And so he would not lash out. He would just sort of take it. And so after a few years, he decided to end the relationship. And then he kept thinking about the relationship after. He knew he made the right choice, but he kept saying to himself, I can't shake this. I keep thinking of her. I said, maybe I was wrong. And then somebody in the article said, no, you weren't wrong. It's just that you're going through a time that something is still connecting you to this relationship. It might not even be the person. The first thing you have to ask is, okay, let's try the detachment. And he did the detachment exercise where he just said, Spirit, detach me. And he tried it a few times and he says, no, that's not working. So the second thing is, if you're still connected, ask yourself, what is connecting me to this relationship? Is it because that person, because even in a toxic relationship, it's not always toxic. There are moments of happiness. There are moments that things are absolutely great. And he said that in the article. He said, when things were great, my God, it was fantastic. When things were great, it was like heaven. When things were not great, it was like hell. It was just like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde sort of scenario. This person changed from this very gentle person to a very mean, just degrading person. So what attached you to that relationship? Well, she said that she loved me. And then he gave a list of 4 or 5 things, and one of them was, I liked being in a relationship. Okay, so none of them, of the list, had anything to do with her. It was about a feeling. So if it is about a feeling, then it's something in you that is craving that feeling. It's not that you want to go back to the relationship. You're missing the feeling that that person gave you that satisfied you. It's just that it came at a cost. But it shouldn't. That's not unconditional love. And of course, you knew that. That's why you left. But when you start asking those harder questions and actually addressing it, that's when you start shifting the energy from the person to the relationship and start working through that. Eventually, you'll be able to say, if you still need other people's words to saying, I love you, then that simply means that you don't love yourself enough. There isn't enough that you're saying to yourself, and you need it from other people. And that's not right. Not that it's not right. It's just that it is your nature to love yourself first before you can share that love with someone else. So if you work on that, all of a sudden the relationship and that energy will detach. Okay, so that's one technique that you could use if you are in, or if you were in a relationship and that it was toxic and you just couldn't seem to get out of that. All right, so look at why you were there in the first place, why you waited all those years. Because I'll tell you, if they were toxic when they were dating, there's no way they would have gone to the altar. 100%. Somehow this person showed her nice face, her whatever it was. And it happens, of course, the other way too. But one party is hiding who they really are and showing a good face, and the other is just seeing that, and okay, that's the way it's going to be for the rest of our lives, and that's what I want to marry. That's what I want to be associated with. Okay. But children need to really find out and find out how to be able to do this. One of the things that we do, instead of detachment, we do distraction. And the difference is that, okay, if I have something really in my head that I can't deal with, let's say it is this relationship, and I don't want to deal with it. I want to just bury it. So I'll watch TV, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll play a game, play Monopoly, or play something. In other words, I want to distract myself to the point where it sort of fizzles out and it fades away, but it only is buried. And always that will come up in a point where you're trying to find your true authenticity. That will come up again and again. And so many times we hear, Tony, I thought I dealt with that already. That relationship was like 20 years ago, and I thought I dealt with that. Well, obviously you haven't. And I'm not saying this as a blame. I'm saying that you haven't, because you haven't had nobody's told you that you could. Maybe if somebody were to say, you could do this, and then they say, really? Yeah, I have full faith in you. And many times, that's all I have to say to somebody. You can do this, because it works on kids. If they're going through a sadness, I'll do a quick one that I did one the other day. If you're going through a sadness, ask the child, where are they on their body that's sad? Where is it? Is it in your arms? Is it on your shoulders? Because kids are really connected. I love working with them because they just came out of spirit, so they're connected. And I says, no, it's in my tummy. So then I know it's worry. It's a sadness and a worry. So I says, okay, so take that sadness out of your tummy and put it in your hand. And they do. Every single time I've said that, they do it within literally 10, 15 seconds. And I said, look at it. What do you see? Tell me what you see. And they describe it. Is it a color? Is it big? Is it small? Is it is it an animal? Like, what is it? And so then they would start about going and describing it. And most times it's stuff like it's heavy, or it's dark, it's sort of mad, or it's sad, or in various descriptions. And then all I would say is, what does this energy want? Talk to it. All of a sudden, the energy is not in their body. Remember detachment? The energy is not in their body. It's now in their hand. That's detachment. What do you want? Instead of asking the child what they want, they have no idea. Neither would an adult. So they say, it wants to leave. It wants to be free. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to blow a color on this energy. What color comes out? I like pink. Okay. blow pink on this and see what happens. And usually it turns into a bunny, or it turns into a butterfly or a dragonfly or something, or sometimes it's gone. And then I say, how do you feel? I feel better. Well, good. In that way, that's what kids need to find out. But if we hold on to that, here's the thing. Anything that you bury, anything, if it's 5 years old, something happened in a playground, and you don't address it for 60 years, it's now a bigger thing because it's had time to root itself. It's had time to be a bigger thing. It's been affecting you, whether you know it or not, for 55 years or 60 years. It's been affecting you. You just don't know it because we don't really connect to it. And all of a sudden it comes up, oh, I remember that. I really did not feel good there. I says, your whole life has been kind of like that. He says, yeah, but now I'm 65. I says, thank God, because you still have several years left to do a good job. It's not about when you find this out, it's that you found it out. You wouldn't want to take this into the next life because then we're starting over. You're addressing it now, which is smart. It's just smart energy, okay? In the 1930s, Nikola Tesla had said in many articles that detaching from this world is much more effective using energy work, frequency, and vibration. And so in that line, Spirit gave me the idea of making a special Lotus Flower meditation for this very thing. And it's full of vibration, energy work, and it's all in there, jam-packed for you. You don't even have to do hardly anything. But you do need to do one thing. I want you to select a time in your life that you had trauma, that you had something, you were disrespected, you were abandoned, you were left for you to fend for yourself, that nobody loved you, that you think you're alone, whatever it is for you. I want you to choose the biggest thing that ever happened to you, because if you remember it and it's still a thing, that means it's still attached to you. If you don't remember it, you've dealt with it, okay? That's how it goes, all right? And I want you to choose that and then think of that situation while you're watching the video. It's about 13 minutes. It's 777 seconds. 7 represents divine connection. And it's exactly numerology, exactly where it will get right to your system fast. We'll be able to take care of this in 13 minutes. So it's not about speed. This is the speed of the way Spirit works. Think of the incident or the situation or the trauma or whatever you want to call it, and not put yourself in a victim mentality. Just say to yourself, Spirit, 3 words, Spirit, detach me. And just see yourself like an extension cord, unplugging, or some kind of detachment. Some people like the rockets, where it gets to a certain height and the booster tanks blow off, it detaches. Whatever works for you, whatever your visual is of separating that trauma and detach from it. And so you look at it from a different perspective. Not that you're feeling the trauma, you've detached from it, and now you're going to see what happens there. Okay, we've got tuning forks, we've got several different vibrations in there, and we've also linked it in with the Om Mani Padme Hum, which is referring to the lotus flower, that you are this precious flower that is absolutely resilient. And the Om Mani Padme Hum, it's a chant. It's going to go on for the whole 13 minutes, telling you and trying to ingrain in you, or remind you is probably a better word, that you are this incredible light that came onto this earth, and you are resilient, just like this flower is in the swamp, and it will look beautiful, and it will override that I don't love myself, or it will help. It still has to go through your final editing to agree with it, but it will help immensely. So I want you to think of this and then saying, help me detach. And if you've detached and you don't feel it, move on to the next thing and the next thing, if there's time. Okay, let's see where we are in 13 minutes. Does that sound fair? Let's choose a nice place to sit where it's comfortable for you. Okay, you can turn up your volumes, everybody, and because I didn't want to make it too loud, so you can adjust your. Okay, I'm going to mute everybody just so that we are going there, and we'll see you in about 13 minutes. Enjoy, people. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Slowly come back. Try and remember what you saw, what you felt. Good weekend, everybody. I hope this was advantageous for you, and definitely let me know how you fare out. Post something on the site if you're going through stuff, and we can give you some insight as we go through it. Okay. Have a good weekend, everybody. Love you all. Okay.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay. Bye now. Bye.
Bye.